Amazing that in a full-day conference, there is just one talk dedicated to testing. For me, about 70 to 80% of my time when coding is dedicated to testing. And I want to transfer some of that knowledge to you. Hopefully, you will test more and more. How many people here can, after coding, running their tests, push to production? Nice, nice. Hopefully there will be more and more as time goes by. Okay, Ode to Node. My name is Tayar, as I said, and I want to talk about testing front-end the back-end way. The pyramid of testing, everybody understands it totally different. And this is how I understand it, and please, all you TDD fanatics out there, I know there are also acceptance tests and component tests, and when I say integration tests, I mean integrating tests, and integration tests are a totally different thing. I know, come on, this is a React Conf, not a testing conf. Give me some leeway here. Let's talk about unit tests. First of all, I want to talk about tests in general, and then I'll talk about React tests. Unit tests, what are unit tests? Unit tests take one class, one module, one function, and I'll talk about modules here, and test it in isolation. These are very fast tests, and they're great because they're fast, they check whatever is needed, but unfortunately, they check the behavior of one unit, and then you check the behavior of another unit, and you check the behavior of another unit, but you don't really know when you combine these, you get the behavior you wanted. All you know is you think you're getting the behavior you wanted. And that is what integrations are for. Integration tests take a set of modules and combine them together and test them as a unit together. They're usually very fast tests, but the problem is finding a set of related modules that you can test in isolation and not the whole application. And this is a very big problem. The third thing is the end-to-end. These tests are frankly a pain in the butt. What they mean is, I don't care about modules, I don't care about anything. Run the application as if it was in production. And then test it as if the user was clicking on the buttons and entering text. This is very, very, very slow, difficult to create these tests, and they are incredibly flaky, even in the front end. In the back end, definitely. Fortunately, you need only a few of these tests just to verify that everything is running okay. But unfortunately, you do need them. Because with all due respect, there are things that you can see only when you run the whole app that you can't see when you test in isolation. But how does this look in React testing, when testing a React app? Let's start our journey with unit tests. Unit tests, because we're talking React, basically tests one component in isolation. It's testing a specific component. And what does this mean? It means testing the rendering, checking that the rendering is fine given the props. It means testing the event handling, that the click is handled correctly, and that the state changes happen correctly also. All these three, rendering, event handling, and state changing, and please remember these three. Let's skip integration and talk about end-to-end. What does end-to-end test mean in a web app? Unfortunately, it means running a server to load your app, running a browser that goes through the server and loads the app, and then testing it using browser automation. Click, click, text, text, click, click, text, text. And don't forget those pesky AJAX calls, which you somehow need to mock, because if you're not full stack, then you don't have the server with you. And browser automation, you know the usual suspects. It's Selenium, Protractor, WebDriver. They're a pain, they're difficult to use, and again, flakiness is a problem. What about integration tests? That's a big question. Basically, it's testing a set of React components together. But what do we test them? Do we test them like unit tests, by testing them functionally? Or do we test them like an app by clicking on buttons, et cetera, et cetera? And again, React components and all the things also do a lot of times AJAX requests. How do we deal with those? Let me get back to you on that, and we'll discuss unit tests first. prior to Node. As we said, unit test is just testing one component. The established practice in unit tests and of all the documentation I've been seeing is just render the component using a package given by React called ReactTestUtils. I don't know if some of you have used it. Let's look at the code. This is rendering a component with ReactTestUtils. I use ReactTestUtils, I create a render. This is a shortcut, it's usually a bit longer. And then I render a counter. And I'll be using the counter example. This is the usual counter as Dan Abramov and others use them. You know, a counter where you have plus and minus and a counter in the middle with state, which is the counter value. We render it. What does rendering a component mean with ReactTestUtils? What we get back is not the HTML element, it's the React element. A React element is basically a JavaScript object which defines the elements, the HTML elements of that component. How do we test that? This is it. Counter element is the React element, and it's just a JavaScript object. So I can go to its props, go to the children, which is the props of the element, check the first child, which is the A tag, and check that it's an A tag. And also check that the value inside it is equal to minus, because that's what I want. Obviously, I need to do many more tests to check the rendering, but this is just an example for the talk. Okay, let's wrap it in Mocha. Mocha is my preferred testing framework. Very simple. Let's skip all the requires. I use requires and not import, not ES6 modules, for reasons that will be explained later. But as you can see, once you use ES6, the syntax is incredibly similar. So I describe the test, and it should include an A with a minus sign, and I just use the code I used earlier, but instead of just writing the output, I do an expect, and I expect it to equal A, and I expect the text inside it to equal minus. But how do we run this? This needs to run in the browser, not in Node. How do we run it? Well, the best practice is to use Karma. What does Karma do? Karma is obfuscated. I look at this and my heart goes, no, please don't. But that's what we had. You take the test code, the Mocha code, you run it through a Karma build. What the Karma build does is create an HTML with JavaScript, etc., that includes the test code in a certain pre-processed way. And then there's a Karma runner which you use. It's a web server which serves that HTML to the browser. And then the browser can run the tests. Wow. This is a bit difficult for me, but this is basically what happens in a Karma scene. Let's run it. Let's use Karma to run this. I run Karma, start karma.conf, and look what I get. I get an error. Unexpected token less than. Anybody know why? Thank you. Well, we are in a React Conf. Yes, JSX. The browser does not understand JSX, obviously. So what do? We transpile. I add to the Karma configuration, I add preprocessors which say Babel. Fine, let's continue and run it again. We passed that. Now it understands JSX, but what does it not understand? Require. Unfortunately, as of yet, browsers do not understand require, and as of today, they do not understand ES6 modules. So I can't do anything about that. So I don't have require. So what do? Babel won't help here, but what will help? Webpack, Browserify, Rollup, whatever, JSPM, all those things what do? They take the whole bundle of modules that are used and bundle them together into one JavaScript file. And I tried, really. I mean, I was supposed to do a lightning talk. I was upgraded, so I had only 2 days to try it. I could not succeed. I know it's possible, obviously, it's possible. But why? Because there's a conflict here. There's a conflict between Karma and Webpack. Karma wants to bundle it for its own purposes. Webpack wants to bundle it for its own purposes, the test code. So there's a conflict, and there's talks about don't use it in entry points and use this in entry points, blah, 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 blah. Too tired. I'm sorry, I'm too old for this. Now we come to the nice one. Unit tests in node land. This is totally different. This is really, really nice. And we can do better than Karma. We can do faster than Karma, just like Steve Austin. And if we stay in node land and not try to run to the browser, things become nice. So let's try it. Just take the Mocha file. Just take the Mocha file and just run it in Mocha, just to see what happens. And I run it Mocha, I get the same file, Mocha file. And what do we get again? Obviously, JSX. Well, obviously, does Node understand JSX? Nope, does not. So what do? We use something called, it's a really cool thing called Babel register. Babel register is a module, which when you require it, and you can require it in Mocha prior to all your tests, it installs hooks. It installs hooks on the require so that every require passes through Babel. And if your Babel configuration says, please transpile JSX, then the test passes. Just like that. A test which was supposed to run on the browser just passes in node land. So let's recap what we did. We just ran the test under node. None of that code is running in the browser this time. And we just run Mocha. And Mocha just runs our code. The only problem is the JSX, and we use Babel register for that. How much time does this test take? About a few milliseconds, which means that we can run hundreds of these tests in a few seconds. And can we do better than this? Well, yes. Let's look at these horrible, horrible, ugly, ugly React element expectations, assertions. Can we do better than that? And the answer is yes. And somebody alluded to that in one of the lightning talks. There's a nice package by Airbnb called Enzyme. Enzyme because enzymes react quickly, I think. I think that's the point. And it has a renderer which just calls ReactTestUtils. It's called Shallow. And what it returns is not a React element, but a wrapper around React element, which gives a nice jQuery-like interface to the React element. So I can do element.find a.dec, which is the A with a class of decrease in the code, and just access its text. So this is really, really nice to test shallow rendering. And before we continue, I want to discuss something very important. And this is the next thing, which is isomorphic code. Isomorphic code was used like last year. Now nobody says isomorphic code anymore. They use the word universal apps. Universal apps are apps where the JavaScript runs both on the browser and on the server code. So why am I insisting on the horribly ancient words isomorphic code? Because I don't want the code to run on the browser and on the server. I want the code to run on the browser and in my tests in Node. Okay? So I'm still using the words isomorphic and not universal apps. This, and I'll talk about what exactly is isomorphic code. This is only for tests, not for server-side rendering. Okay, so this is isomorphic code. Your test code and your production code runs under Node, but only the production code needs to run under the browser. Just if somebody is not familiar, production code is all your code that is not the test code, okay? The code that we run, that our users run. Let's see if our production code is isomorphic. Is this is the counter, well, part of it. Regular counter, I'm not going to get into it. Everybody knows how this is. This isomorphic code. Let's check whether it runs under the browser. Does it run on the browser? Let's look part by part. Does require run on the browser? Nope. The browser does not understand require. So how do we make it happen? How do we make this isomorphic? We always talked about that. Webpack, rollup, browserify, etc., etc. Can the browser run React? Well, obviously, React was meant to run under the browser. Can the browser understand ES6? Incredibly enough, today, most browsers will understand this code, but let's assume that some of ours are using EM, IE, whatever. So no, they do not understand ES6, but we have Babel. We install a Webpack plugin or a Browserify loader or whatever, and this gets transpiled to ES5. And does the browser understand JSX? Again, Babel can meet that using a Babel JSX plugin. So basically, our code runs under the browser. This code runs under the browser. But notice this, our production code, every change we put in the production code, we need to run a build step, create a bundle, and it's that bundle that will be used by the browser. This is really bad. And I remember, I think it's Katrina's talk where she talked about the magic of building HTML and CSS and JavaScript, where you just code and refresh the browser and it works. And we've lost some of that magic because of all the tooling. And I want to see how that, I want to show you how that magic is restored in Node land. But unfortunately, in browser land, there's no way about it until we have ES6 module support in the browsers, at least a year away, at least. But does our code run under Node? Let's go over it. Does this require run under Node? Yes, it just works. Require, I think, was invented in Node, or well, almost invented in Node. It just works. It just loads that module transparently and natively, and synchronously, by the way. No need for Webpack. Does Node understand React? Incredibly enough, yes. React, I think, is the first web framework to run on Node. Okay? It doesn't need a window, it doesn't need a document, it doesn't need a DOM. It's just pure JavaScript code. No reason why it can't run under Node. Does ES6 run under Node? Yes, finally. Node version 6 is the first version of Node that fully understands 100% JavaScript minus ES6 modules, minus imports, which is why I use require here. It's not 100%, it's 93%, but I can't seem to find those 7%. I've been trying very hard. So from my point of view, it's 100%. What about JSX? Does it run? Nope. Yeah, that's the only thing that's a problem here. No JSX. But we use Babel register as we discussed. Let's look at the Babel RC, which is what we use to configure Babel. And I'm using here what is called env, which means in development, i.e. when running tests, just transform the JSX. Don't do the whole ES5 thing. Not necessary. So Babel transpiling here will be incredibly, incredibly fast. And Babel register also caches and checks for modification times. So it just compiles once, transpiles once. In production, obviously, we need the whole shebang. We need to transpile ES6 to ES5. We need to add React, blah, 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 blah. So it's a totally different ballgame, much, much slower. OK. And this is the build process when running tests under Node. No, there's no continuation. There is no build process. You want to change the production code and run the tests again? Fine, change the production code, run the tests again. You want to change the test and run the test again? Fine, just change the test and run the test again. We have a developer on our team which has one window running all the tests with a watch, a regular watch, and she's compiling, she's changing the code and fixing until everything is green again. It's that fast. It is incredibly fast. But we skipped something. We skipped something in previous unit tests. We talked about rendering, but that's only a part of unit testing components. We need to also test events, event handling, and state changes. Well, what is the case here? Well, we need to check that when you click on plus, the text changes to 1, as an example. Can we test it? Unfortunately, given ReactTestUtils, we can't. There is no DOM. React just shallowly calls the render function, get back a React element, but you can't do anything with that React element. It's just a static JavaScript object. You can't really do anything. Well, what do? Well, I checked. We can spy on the click handler, and there's an example in Enzyme where they build a spy object, and they put it in the on button click, and then they simulate a click, and then they check that the button was called, the spy was called. This is not a unit test. I mean, you're testing nothing. It's a feeling that I have sometimes when I write unit tests, when I'm thinking I'm testing nothing, really. I'm just having unit tests just to have them. This is exactly one of those times. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods here. Yeah, we all do that. This is very sad because you can't use Enzyme or ReactTestUtils to test React components. There is Jest. It's a new framework by Facebook, and V14 looks as if it has something like that. I'm not sure, does it use DOM, doesn't it use DOM? I'm not exactly sure. I didn't have time. As I said, I had only 2 days to prepare for this talk. So hey, go ahead and figure it. But I think I have a more powerful solution than Jest has. Jest has the inner knowledge of React, and I don't. What is the powerful solution? It's called jsdom. JSDOM is a partial implementation of DOM. DOM is a standard. It describes in minute and very, very boring detail how the DOM works in a browser. And what the guys in JSDOM did was implement it. And it's a partial implementation, but it's a very, very good port. And let's look at the sample code. I'm just using JSDOM here, no tests, no nothing. I'm requiring JSDOM, and I'm creating a document. With this div. Notice that I'm not closing, I just noticed it. I'm not closing the div. It's a bug of mine. I'm opening another div. But this is JSDOM, and DOM should handle it, and it does, and somehow all my examples worked. But that's HTML for you. I get a document. Document is an exact implementation of the same document that you use in browser land. Same document, you have the same things. Like, for example, document.getElementById works. And if you use the DOM property text content, you get that text content, and it will print hello world in this case. Okay? It's very easy to use, non-obfuscated, no Java abstract provider factory, whatever. This is JavaScript. Very, very simple, which I like. We can even use jQuery. The regular jQuery, I'm using jQuery Slim, but the regular jQuery also works. jQuery Slim is a slimmed down version of jQuery without lots of fluff, which is nicer and faster. We can use the regular jQuery to access the DOM, and it works, incredibly enough. So we have this nice DOM. Can you use React with it? Yep. But there's a caveat. React works fine without a DOM. But it checks. If there's no document object, then it assumes that it's running under the server. If there is a document window object, then, oh, I'm running under the browser, and I have the full functionality of React. So we fake it. We add to the global node object document window and navigator just like we did. We have to add navigator. I have no idea why, but it's part of the document, the DOM standard. And without it, React doesn't work. Require React, it has to be after. Requiring React has to be after I have a global document. And now I can just use the regular React DOM render. Regular one, get element by ID, mount point, and use jQuery to check the text. And it will return 0. The counter value will be 0. The React DOM element has been rendered into the DOM. Sorry, the React component has been rendered into the DOM. For all React here, it's running under the browser. And this is working in node land, not in browser land. Just wrap it in a before each, so that each test has its own DOM document. Test it just like this, React DOM.render. Expect using jQuery, and boom, you've checked render. That's it. Much nicer than using ReactTestUtils, and as fast. it's still running under milliseconds. Probably a little bit slower, but almost as fast. What about what we came here for? Event handling and state changes. Well, I tried using jQuery. Trigger using jQuery, it doesn't work. It seems that trigger jQuery works only on event handlers put in by jQuery, and React obviously does not use jQuery, so it doesn't work. But this is DOM. DOM has events. So I just created an event using the really ugly DOM syntax. It's really ugly. And dispatched the click event on the increase, and voila, the text increased to 1 synchronously, incredibly enough. Obviously, once React Fiber is in, it will be async, but currently it's definitely synchronous. This is ugly, but it can be easily wrapped in nice utils functions, and I will leave that as an exercise to the reader. And it still runs it in unit tests, in milliseconds. And all this is running Node. And I'm testing rendering, event handling, state changes using regular React DOM rendering, the regular one, jsdom, jQuery, DOM events, all under Node, all in milliseconds. What about those pesky integration tests which I referred to? Actually, we've solved the problem. Let's build a React app, which encompasses the counter. This is a regular React app. It has nothing but just a big component that just returns counter. But let's assume that it's a real React app with Redux or MobX or whatever, and Ajax requests, the whole shebang, your whole app. Can we use the same functionality as before? Yeah. You can take your React app, use the simulated DOM, jsdom, and it just works. Redux, MobX, well, I've never tried MobX, but Redux, MobX works. Definitely Redux, we're big fans. And it just works. I can test the whole app using this functionality under Node. We can test a subset if we want, the whole app. It's your choice. And again, it runs in milliseconds. No need to run a server to serve those files. No need to run a browser. Not flaky. Well, assuming your tests are synchronous, and if they're asynchronous, that you wrote them correctly. You can debug with any Node debugger. A Node Inspector, IntelliJ, Visual Studio Code, whatever. Chrome DevTools now can debug it. No source maps whatsoever. No, gone are the days of source maps. Gone are the build steps. You just change, run, change, run. And you get a nice benefit. In Node land, there's a beautiful, beautiful module called knock. It's a mocking of network. It mocks HTTP. So you can say, if I get this HTTP request, return this response. It's beautiful, and it doesn't need a server. It patches Node in a way so that when Node does an Ajax request or an HTTP request, it just traps it and returns the correct result. So you even get Ajax requests in milliseconds without any mock server. What about browser tests? Unfortunately, they're still problematic to write. They're still problematic to run. I do have some stuff to say about this, but maybe we'll leave that to another talk. But once you have integration tests that can test the whole app, the whole idea of browser tests is, okay, just write 1 or 2 tests just to make sure. You can run and test your whole app using under Node land, and it just works. So in our team, we're using hundreds and hundreds of tests, most of them integration tests, to test our app functionality, which is why I can do a change, add a test, run, make sure it's green, push to production, and it just works. And as a nice, I was supposed to give a lightning talk, and this was the lightning talk. I wanted to do something different. It's my first lightning talk, so I made up a song, and I think it's a nice summary of what I was talking about. So bear with me. It was a long time ago. The pyramid of testing was the light of our soul. We had lots of tests, mostly unit, of course, and a small set of end-to-end tests, which we did without remorse. But what about those integration tests, my friend? Should they be like the unit, or rather, the end-to-ends? Should they clickety-click the buttons in the UI, like in the end-to-end suits? Or like the units, call some methods and check the results? And I'm sorry if some of these rhymes appear a bit obtuse. For if they are like the end-to-ends, they run very slowly. And if they are like the units, then they don't check it all. If only we could test the whole code through the UI, yet run them as fast as can be. Halevai. And halevai is Hebrew for I wish. I need all the languages I can for these rhymes to work. Capiche? So what do we want now? We want tests that check the whole code, but somehow run as fast as the units, damn it. Fast and complete, that's the requirement. The crux of the matter is the browser. The infernal thing can't go any faster. It's so slow, but it's the only thing that can run JavaScript. It can't be skipped. But wait a bit. The browser can't be skipped? 5 years ago, I would have said it can't be skipped. No. But today, we have Node. Yeah, I know. For Node runs JavaScript pretty good, for it has the V8 engine under the hood. It can run it as fast as the browser, and actually much faster, because it doesn't carry so much baggage, and that's a huge advantage. But part of that baggage we need. Oh yes, we need it indeed. Because without that baggage, our tests can't do clickety-click on the buttons and can't be like those end-to-end tests. And what is that baggage? It's the DOM, the browser's jewel. And no, not Dom Perignon, you fool. Without the DOM, our integration tests amount to nothing. End of discussion. The DOM is the code that reads the HTML and creates the element hierarchy pal. Those elements that contain the app's content, these elements, they respond to a user's event. But what if, and it's a pretty big if, the DOM we could rewrite, and if we do it, and we do it right, we could run our DOM code under, what was that engine? Node. If we have a DOM under the Node, damn it, why, the sky could be the limit. We could test all our code, the clicks and the renders under Node. But wait, this dream may yet come true, for it seems that NPM has come to the rescue. For there is a package, it is true, called jsdom, color me blue. And it's a complete simulation, lacking in almost nothing, of the browser's DOM support. It's actually a pretty good port. And the code looks something like this. And if I'm not amiss, it can even run jQuery vanilla and use it to query our DOM. Hallelujah. So now to this code, let's add some oomph. And since we are in a React Conf, we'll write the application code we want to test in React. Of course, it's the best. And now that we have our application, we can test by just rendering it into our DOM. And it's time to confess that it's as easy as that, as nice as tapioca, but only after we wrap it in Mocha. Now let's run it with Mocha. Why? To check the application code, duh. Oh, the test has failed? No matter, this fix has it nailed. And we run it again. We're green, so let us say, amen. Did you see what just happened there? We just fixed it and ran, without having built it. No build step, no Webpack, no browserify Babel, even though our code used require and the S6, you can tell. And yet it ran just like that, as fast as can be. Milliseconds for a test. That's a miracle. I bet that you can see. But how does it work? That's the beauty of Node version 6. It's the first node that fully understands ES6. So now we can just examine the code and adjust and have no build steps to run all those tests. And they are so fast, 10 times faster than in the browser. We can run hundreds of them before you can say wowzer. And the friction is gone. We can fix them ASAP without that fricking build that transpiles and packs. And as a nice plus, we adjusted and moved all our unit tests to run under Node, not the browser. And if our code uses ES6 and requires, so what? We support that. And our time to run 2 unit tests was also cut. And now just our end-to-end tests run in the browser, and they're a pain in the butt, as they should be. But the mass of our tests run under Node and run gazillions quickly. So next time you're thinking about your tests, give jsdom a try. You will not regret it. Thank you very much. Before questions, I'd like to add, this is the usual time where we say we're hiring. In this case, I just left Wix, so I'm fully available if there's a company that's interesting. You know how to reach me.
If you have questions, you can line up here because we have this microphone, so just come over here. I will just start by asking 2 questions very quickly.
Sure. By the way, all the code is in this URL. Sorry about that.
So I see that you're sort of a minimalistic guy. You want to make things really, really simple, sort of.
Definitely.
And I have like 2 questions on like why not going even further. So one is like, have you tried just instead of rendering with JSX, for instance, just calling the functions of the components?
Definitely. Definitely. I tried convincing my team to kill JSX.
Yep.
I couldn't.
It's not about killing JSX like in the code, but in the test, because as far as I understand, the only problem is that default props don't work.
No,
you can fix some.
Also in the code also uses JSX. The production code also runs under Node. So.
Yep. Yeah. And the other one is about Mocha. I feel that Mocha has sort of a slippery slope that people end up using all these crazy matchers. Expect this to be equal, maybe in the future, whatever. And I've been trying a lot tape, and sort of tape forces you to use the regular assert library that there is in Node. And the advantage is that it's even faster. The disadvantage is that you don't have pretty nice error messages, but as a third argument, you can just write your own message, and you don't need to learn all these DSLs and stuff.
Go ahead, use whatever runner you want that runs under Node. That's fine. Tape is a bit problematic because it preprocesses the files in a very strange way that I couldn't figure out. But if you can make it run under Node, hey, go ahead. I mean, I use Mocha because I use Mocha.
My question is more about like
It's not a religious thing. Use Jasmine for all I care.
Sababa. But my question is more about what do you feel about these matcher things? Do you think these matchers really help?
It's a question it's a different question. It's a question of how do you test. Really, I'm not religious. Mocha, Jasmine, Tape, Ava, go ahead. Yes?
We have an idea how to easily cross-browser compatibility tests, like whether it runs on ES6 or 7 or 8. Can you help with that as well, or?
That's browser tests. That's a pain in the butt. I've said it a few times. I have no answer. I have no good answer for that. Sorry. It's a problem. Anything else? Anything more? Thank you very much.